some of the reasons. The second thing that I want to clarify is where does gNMI compare to OpenFlow? And there are two different things. OpenFlow focuses on the forwarding plane and forwarding packets, and gNMI focuses on the platform, on configuring the platform and monitoring the platform, or even configuring the OpenFlow method that we need to configure to get OpenFlow working. So with that out of the way, if we would have to decompose gNMI, we would visit apart in three pieces, three components. One is the gRPC, which is the transport, which is a high-performance RPC framework. The second one is the service definition of the gNMI. So basically the actions, in this case the get, the set, the subscribe, and capabilities. And the three piece is where we apply those actions to. So the properties, which is typically a tree structured data. In our case, it's OpenConfig, which alters young data models. So what is gRPC? gRPC is a client-to-server protocol. It uses HTTP version 2. It uses whatever port you want it to use, and it has some good things that we want, some good properties that we like authentication, encryption, complex compression, multiplexity, and bidirectional. So, as in RPC, remote procedure call, the client calls procedures on the server, and it passes data back and forth, and to pass this data, it uses protocol buffers to serialize this specific data. Think of protocol buffers like XML, but way simpler, way faster, way more efficient. So, okay, we have gRPC, but how do we define a service in gRPC? So in gRPC, we use a service definition also inside a protocol buffer. This is a very good example of a service definition. So we have a service, which is called iter, and it has two RPCs. The first RPC is hello, it gets some parameters, returns some parameters back. The second RPC is called forever hello, and it has some particularities with it because it has that string in the parameters that it passes and returns. Basically what it does is whenever you call forever hello, you're actually establishing a channel between the client and the target, or actually the server. So you have a session, and then in that session you can have multiple channels, and you do this with this thing keyword. Sorry. So if you're thinking about streaming telemetry, this is the building block. One other good thing about having protocol buffers is that you can have your service definition like this. So this is a snippet of the protocol buffer, and then you can convert or actually generate code in any of those languages that are there in the corner. So pick your favorite language, and you can have your server in one language and your client in another language. So we know what gRPC does, it's the transport. We know how gRPC defines the service. How is gNMI service defined? So the gNMI service is defined with four RPCs. So capabilities RPC, the get RPC, the set RPC, and the subscribe RPC. And that subscribe there is, as you might have figured out because of the string keyword, the one that would be used for telemetry. In the gNMI world, the server is also named the target. The target always authenticates the client always authenticates the target, and the session is always encrypted. Other names for client is user, collector, or other names for target is switch and server. So we have the transport, which is gRPC. We have the service definition, which is gNMI. Now we need to have the properties or the values we're going to apply these operations to. And for that, we use YAML. YAML is the data modeling language. OpenConfig uses this data modeling language with some authoring guidelines, and it puts it out there in a specific structure. So on the right side, you can see a snippet of a YAML model for two specific properties in the OpenFlow protocol agent. The backoff interval, which is it gives you a type, the units, and description, and the inactivity probe. So this would be inside the YAML model. That was the YAML model. This is a little bit more how you see this data in an OpenConfig data structure. So let's say, for example, that we want here get this value from your target backoff interval. This value lives under state, which lives under agent, which lives under OpenFlow, which lives under system. So you can basically use this reference implementation of gNMI, which is in GitHub, and say, I want to get an X part of the system, OpenFlow agent, state, backoff interval. So system, OpenFlow agent, state, backoff interval. You can, on the same get, make multiple requests, multiple paths. One important thing is that the operation set or get are transactional, which means that these paths, at least, or actually all of them, need to exist in order for the operation to return success. So if one of these paths does not exist, the operation just says, sorry, this path does not exist, and fails with an error, even if all the other paths would. Sure.
How does this work? Say, for example, if I have OBS on this machine and I have gNMI, how do they interface? I mean, that's something that I couldn't really understand.
Well, because OBS is not really a platform, right? You'd probably be dealing with the platform that holds OBS.
I can actually imagine if OBS supports a gRPC target protocol, we could actually use gNMI to configure, say, the OpenFlow controller at LS, whether using SSL or not.
So does that mean that it has to be embedded and it not be just right next to it in terms of as a service?
Sure.
With backend plugins, say, whatever it is that it says, okay, hey, here is a target, one is an OBS target, and you attach it however it is to attach it.
Sure, it's possible. Somebody codes it. If there's something that needs to be configured, monitored with telemetry, somebody can do it.
Yeah, imagine, so right now your way of interacting with OBS is probably OBS control command line, right?
Correct.
With this, we could have a standard RPC way to talk to OBS to set up the basic things. How do you connect the controller? How do you monitor it?
Yeah, because that I think would be very useful.
Yeah.
The reason as to why I asked this question is that I couldn't really, I mean, with the documentation, nothing, no blaming or anything like that. But with the documentation, I couldn't really understand the kind of the handshake as to where these things would actually interact and how they would actually interact.
So Jerry's going to do a demo of an example network device that happens to have OVS and some other things on it.
Oh,
an agent on there that shows how it all works together. Cool. It might be coming. Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the question. So we've seen the get example. How does the gNMI set work? The gNMI set has three things, three different things that you can ask repeatedly. You can ask multiple repeats, multiple replaces, and multiple updates. gNMI set is also transactional, which means that the aggregate of all those operations that you were asking, they all need to be successful at the same time. If you need to merge the results of those operations, the way you do it is you first do all the deletes, then do all the replaces, and then do all the replaces. There on the right side, there's also an example of how to use this reference implementation that is in GitHub to do a set using, in this case, JSON, just pure JSON. So you say update and then slash, which is basically the roots, and then with the I don't know the name of that variable, you call the set JSON. And the set JSON just has the structure in JSON for actually two variables that you're setting to 15 and 12. So there's two things that you might have not noticed before. There's the backoff interval, for example, that shows under state and config. And if I'm here stating, but if gNMI operations are transactional, why do we have state and config? Well, the reason is because we're using OpenConfig, and OpenConfig at the time had to consider systems that are asynchronous, so where you do a set, but you would not get the result immediately that set would have been successful. So that system would need to go proactively check the state to see if it would have been set successfully. So this is a remnant of OpenConfig. In our case, because it is transactional, the state should always be equal to config. So the encoding, we can encode values I showed you before in this example here. You have multiple values encoded in a tree. In this case, they're encoded in JSON. You can encode these values in multiple ways. JSON was the one I showed. It's okay to use, but we should really focus on using the ITF one. Why? Because ITF made this one specifically for your values. Certificates. So as I mentioned before, gNMI sessions are authenticated and encrypted, and they all must use a certificate. The client authenticates the target, including value of the hostname. This is important, and the target authenticates the client. So between the client and the target, you will see these artifacts inside. So the client private key on the client certificate signed by a CA, and the CA certificate. On the target, the same thing, but for the target. Credentials. You can pass credentials as keys, username, password in the metadata of gRPC, because gRPC uses HTTP version 2, so it has metadata. Because gRPC is encrypted after the certificate session is encrypted, so you can pass those values without any problem. The reason is, the question is, we really need those, we need to use username and passwords and role-based access control. Because the whole point of gNMI is to extract the user from interacting with the platform, and username and password is an artifact of humans interacting with the platform. So if you want to do role-based access control, I suggest you do it upstream from gNMI and not between the platform and gNMI. So feel free to implement it, but please don't force it as a requirement. Subscribe. So subscribe, as I mentioned before, this is the string keyword here, which means that whenever you're subscribing to a set of paths, like I explained before, you can also mention which sorts of mode you want to subscribe on. So let's say that you want to subscribe to some counters in some place, some variables in some other place. You define all those paths in your requests, and you say, I want to subscribe this with the mode string. What's going to happen is that whenever those values and those properties update, they will send an update. So the target will proactively send an update to the client with the values that got updated. So it's very efficient because you only have traffic whenever the value actually changes. So if you define the mode once, you basically call the subscribe method with all the paths that you want. You get all the values that you asked for, and the session will just go down, because this is what you asked to do. If you use get subscribe with a poll message, so the poll mode, you get one update for all the values that you subscribe to, and then whenever you send a poll message, an empty poll message to the stream that you opened, you get all the requests, all the paths, values, and the parameters that you subscribe to in one go. So it gives you a little bit of extra versatility, and that stream gives you high efficiency in getting data from targets to the client without having to scrub it all the time.
What's the reason for having it once when we have a gRPC?
Good question. It's a very good question, and I don't know. We need to ask the guys that created gNMI.
Yeah.
What I've seen, is that they just don't implement get at all. They just do gRPC once with it. Okay, so capabilities is the first RPC that I mentioned before. And this one is just stretching the capabilities of the target. So every target is supposed to have defined models and defined encodings that support. And this is the RPC that tells the client, hey, I support these models with these versions, and I support these encodings, and by the way, my gNMI version implementation is blah. So this one is typically also very useful. So some work in progress in the domain of OpenConfig. The OpenFlow model needs to have the controller IP address changed to a name instead of just an IP address. And we should be able to assign certificates to OpenFlow channels. So this will get later in the models. So I'll give a heads up for that. Other work that is also happening is defining the max models and POE models. Typically, there is a discussion within the OpenConfig domain, so all operators that are working in OpenConfig. In this case, I'm planning to ask for the vendors to LGTM the models that are here before being published. Okay, so we use gNMI to configure the platform, configure various paths and variables and properties of the platform. But what we need to configure gNMI? So this is a question that is important because if you want to do auto provisioning, you need to be able to bring gNMI up. Right? So let's check what we need. We need an IP address in the admin interface, and for that, you can just add DHCP. We need to know which port the service needs to be on. One option is to use DHCP option. And the other thing that we need is to have the certificates for gNMI, because gNMI cannot work without certificates. And for that, you can use gNMI. So gNMI is a special case of gNMI, sorry. So gNMI is gRPC, Network Operations Interface. So this is things that we use to typically operate the network more in the sense of rotating certificates, installing certificates, revoking certificates, other specific situations like setting the package or the operating system, rebooting. So stuff that does not need to be defined by OpenConfig models that are just common to most platforms. So gNMI defines a series of these services. These are the ones that I consider most important. There's other services, but these ones are the ones I think are more meaningful. And the service for certificate management is a service that we could use to provision the platform with certificates to get gNMI working. Okay. By the way, none of these RPCs uses OpenConfig. This is a pure RPC where you pass a property, you receive a property, that's it. There's nothing more to it. So let's say that we have a platform, it's unprovisioned, it comes at factory defaults, and we want to have it provisioned. So what do? You click on the platform, rack it, plug the cable, it's in factory defaults, plug the power, and your admin interface should at that point be begging for an IP address, for which the DHCP server will provide an IP address, and together with that IP address, and also provides some option to define, hey, this is the service where you want to have, this is the port where you want to have your service running, your gNMI service running. And once the platform gets that information from DHCP, can then bring an insecure gNMI interface for certificate management. And the reason why we can accept this interface for certificate management to be insecure is because we assume that with the provision typically happens in a secure environment. Okay? So once we have this insecure gNMI service certificate management, we have all the notion to provision the platform with certificates. We do that by using the previous RPCs that we defined. And once that happens, once the service realizes, hey, I have certificates, it should restart the service with gNMI and gNY in a secure mode using those certificates that were provisioned. And that's it. We have a platform that has gNMI working. It can have gNMI working, and it's operational, ready to be provisioned, ready to be configured, ready to be operated. So this is the end goal. This is where we should be aiming to get to deploy 1,000 platforms if we need to. So what's next? Jerry and Moran are going to come here and provide you an example of an access point that is using the gNMI. After that, I'm not quite sure if before or after lunch, we should go back into the funny room there and play the reference implementation of gNMI against your platforms. I'm curious to see what we do. As you've noticed, there is no tests in those in gNMI Docker reference. So there's executables, there's binaries that we get, set the capabilities. So if you could show us how those work with the platforms, we will all be happy. The end goal is that we all align in one implementation, or in our common understanding of what that implementation should be, and that we'll be able to talk with all the platforms, or all platforms. Okay? Any questions? Here.
I had a couple of questions. One was, you said that the operations are transactional. And so the server, in some way, ensures that these requests that it's getting are transactional. I'm assuming, first of all, that means just the RPCs, not the stream activity.
In this case, I'm talking about the gets and the sets.
Right, okay. So, you know, I'm not that familiar with OpenConfig, but is there some generic infrastructure that ensures that things are transactional, that people are putting behind this, or are they expected to dream up their own transactional solution?
This is purely in the server implementation, right?
Right.
If the server is being asked to do something, and in one go, and that's something the server realizes, I cannot do this all in one go because I cannot do this in here. But yes, it's just going to reply, sorry, no, this is the error, I'm going to refuse this type.
Okay, so when you say transactional, do you mean atomic? Or are you truly talking about ACID transactional like in databases?
Talking about the simple transaction between the client and the server on that specific operation where I can have multiple things being asked. And I want that single request that has multiple things being asked, I want that single request to be transactional. So if one of those things that is being asked does not work, tell me why not and refuse.
Okay. Because full transactional semantics is pretty tricky.
Yes.
Okay, so
That's important.
because, like in that case you were just talking about, I'll shut up in a second. If you make a request to do something atomic, and the system goes down halfway through, let's say there's 10 steps in it. You do 5 and you don't do 5. It goes down in the middle. You as the client, you have no idea what happened. So if what you're doing has any kind of side effect, you're dead at that point, right? Because you don't know whether you can repeat it or not repeat it.
Well, in that specific situation, depending on the server implementation, the server should not apply all those operations if it does not know that they're not going to be successful. So there should be a testing implementation that says, okay, this is all good, implement, apply.
So we don't have to solve the general case of the database. It's like typically the actual how you use it to say like, oh, I've got a Wi-Fi IP and I'm provisioning this ID and IP address. One of those things didn't work. So okay, go back and do that again.
Okay, so that means you've got to do at least some form of specialized logging because you can't be making the changes. You've got to journal all of the changes before you start making them.
We would actually do not need to do a journal. Because I would say like either I'm going to set my IP address on something and it didn't work. There's no, you don't need to call that back there.
Okay, well, so I'll shut up. But that, on that issue there, I had another question, but I'll let others know.
So I appreciate the sort of hello world plan that you have mapped out. As in when we go next door and you know, vendors are poking at gNMI targets with the tools and looking at what that use get pretend and that sort of stuff. And I know this may be jumping the gun, but in this room we have vendors and we have operators that may be interested in actually deploying this. So my question is kind of at risk of sounding a bit like a vendor, is when do we plan to have a conversation about the roadmap? Like, to me, one of the things that needs to be discussed is is there some common agreement on which open config models are required to be able to use gNMI in production on hardware? And I'm betting developers on the Fawcett side are interested in knowing answers to the same questions to be able to say, okay, let's begin building some code to have something inside Fawcett or sitting next to Fawcett that may be something like zero-touch provisioning, or may provide some interfaces to things that are outside of OpenFlow.
Right. So with gNMI, at this point, I just wanted us to have an understanding of this implementation.
Mm-hmm.
In the domain of Fawcett, most likely the only required model is going to be the info model. We've asked that one to be implemented by various vendors. I think most of them should have it. And then from there on, it depends really on the business that you're dealing with, right? So if I'm going to web for enterprise or I'll have different platforms, I'll probably select the models that are more convenient for me. So that depends on the industry that you're in.
So this is why we don't need to see it solve the general case, because typically, like once you break this thing and give it an IP, like you may change the IP occasionally, like very occasionally. There's no need to journal or roll it back or do anything in there. It's so cool. Like once you may want to come by and rotate credentials on something, or roll a certificate on something. But again, like you either get us new certificates, new certificate is good, or like no one didn't. So it's like there's quite a limited scope. So we do need to define that. This is an important request that has to be done. But we don't mention that because most of the packet switching, the functionality of the controller, the device itself doesn't actually have that much.
So would there be interest among people interested in deploying Fawcett to have maybe, I don't know, a working group to say, these are the other things that we in practice would need to be able to operate a network using Fawcett that are outside of the scope of OpenFlow and outside of the functional requirements of Fawcett to say, well, I really care about fan speeds, and the next guy really cares about transceiver parameters. And so maybe we'll get together and say, 90% of people want fan speeds and transceiver parameters, so let's speak to vendors about all supporting those.
Sounds extremely reasonable. Because I know a lot of those will be getting things as opposed to setting things. But also actually for wireless is another one where you might go, well, the universe of things will change, and you want to change this idea. Yeah, definitely. And you want to there'll be some various radio normal things you don't want to see it. But again, not necessarily transactional. See the dial to 5, get it to work, do it again.
Yeah. By the way, OpenConfig already has a series of models there. Yeah, they probably have some that address, for example, the fan speeds. They have a lot of people working with OpenConfig, but they're mostly operators. So it's very easy for us to just tag along, subscribe, and be part of the decisions and drive the models that we want.
Okay. Very sensible answers, thank you.
I'll just go back there and then back here.
So I see that there's transactional gets, there's transactional sets. Is there a provision to do a transactional read modify write?
Transactional what, sorry?
A transactional read modify write where you can be sure that the state hasn't changed from the read to the write.
Oh, so for this, so our colleagues in OpenConfig, they're trying to do, this is a little bit confusing thing about the spec. So the OpenConfig spec is much wider than what we're using before. And it was originally written this idea of like you're using OpenConfig to configure a traditional router. So you want to make complex changes to the BGP routing policy or something. It is very important to go, like you failed to Ninja 7 ACL probably and put it back, kind of the same one. So this is not functionality that we plan on using. We don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
So I guess we could come back there, like if it turns out that we'd actually need to have like a whole bunch of stuff with complex dependencies that are as to standing or fall together, that we might need that, but we don't think we need.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'll get back to you. I'm curious about to say.
So in general, there's been a lot of toing and froing about how to automate certificate management over the network. And I know, I mean, it seems like here in this gNMI case, you're trying to do something very simple about it. There's a bunch of existing certificate management protocols out in the world at the moment too. So, and they have some relatively tricky security aspects to them in terms of how it's done so that people don't take over your devices through them and so forth. So how are you deciding what kind of certificate management you're going to be doing in order to propagate these certificates? Because people right now, primarily, they still do it by hand a lot of the time, simply because they don't have an automated mechanism they actually trust.
Well, the condition is the same, right? When we're doing this, when we have this interface, when we have this interface here, which provides the insecure certificate management to the device to be configured, we're assuming that we're in a secure provision environment. And that can mean a lot of things, right? Depending on your business, where you're living, where the platform is, but that's the assumption. It needs to be a secure environment. Either if it's back-to-back cable, doesn't matter, but that's the assumption. And with this certificate management service there, you have enough benefits to provision the platform that certificates you want.
Yeah, I think that answers the question.
Well, probably also like this would be a good working group thing to say. So, Google has its own internal infrastructure to manage certificates, but it would be nice if there was a practical working group that had, like how do we operate using enforcement specifically? Like what's the best practice for that? It would be good to agree on that. So that would be another thing.
For users and passwords, is there a way in the initial secure gNMI connection to configure users? So when we use gNMI,
sorry, can you speak louder?
for users and passwords, right now, is there a way to configure in gNMI a new user and password to use data with gNMI?
No. So the primitives to the RPCs that exist to configure passwords is by using open config models, user and passwords. In gNMI, we don't have one that does password configuration, just certificate installation, file management, and then the system which has a bunch of things related with the platform, rebooting, stuff, and so on.
So you need to know the default usernames of the new targets that you're installing your network.
Where would you use those usernames?
For the gNMI transactions, they all need to be authenticated with username and password immediately.
They don't need to. That's, maybe I should say it again. Credentials, right? So this is credentials. So certificates should be enough to have that connection between the client and targets authenticated and encrypted. There is no need to have a username password to validate the specific command or set or get should be done. You can do that, but you should do it upstream from gNMI in your platform, because username password is typically a thing that is used by humans, and this is not going to be human that is going to deal with your platform area. So that's the idea, is that you have your method components, you have a system that does provisioning, turnups, and whatnot, and you have a trigger from upstream, which is can be a push or green, or somebody flips a note, I want to have this operating system in all switches, and this management system takes care of doing that in all platforms. This management system is already, well, it's certified to do this because it has a certificate from all devices, and all devices will accept this command. I mean, the set of commands. So that's the idea. The use for username and password, there's no machine for it anymore for implementing having this sort of connection with the platform.
Maybe a kind of a stupid question, is it necessary to specify the sort of certificate validation behavior on the target within gNMI, or is that not a problem to solve?
Yes, I mean, once you're using certificates and you have this interface, you should manage the certificates that you have installed. The rotation, the location, according to your policies, automatically. Right? There should be a process that does that, not somebody that goes there.
It's a little bit tricky because certificates are installed by somebody. Platform is owned by somebody else. Okay. So what I mean to say is that the operating system or the platform is call it OVS, for example. Okay. If you have OVS and if I'm installing certificates, I'm Joe somebody. Okay. And I am installing certificates. So the validation needs to be done by OVS or the corresponding gNMI target infrastructure. Okay, whoever is providing that infrastructure is the one who needs to validate. I don't know whether they have network access for doing CRLs, whether they want to do OCSP. That's another can of worms.
So I don't know exactly what needs to be validated here. Can you explain what needs to be validated? Or maybe you can take it out of.
How do you validate the certificate? How do you make sure that a certificate is not revoked? For example.
I see.
Okay, so those kinds of things. So you have OCSP, you have CRL, you have Penta CRL.
But these are the RPCs that allow us to do this. Once you have access, then you can do this.
They just get us and set up. That's it.
Any more questions?
So, going along with this validation question, so I think what you're saying is that the server will have some set of certificates that it will accept. How is that managed?
So, yeah, I guess we don't define that. Right?
This is not part of the gNMI protocol. So the idea is that these are just the interfaces that allow to do that management. And you have these RPCs that allow to do this. If there is a system outside of it, as there is a system that brings devices up, as there is a system that configures the devices, as there is a system that does telemetry, collectors. So all these systems will do this, but using these interfaces.
Right? To the same reason that the patching actually had a 100 PKI.
No, but I think Mark was I think if I understood you correctly, Mark, what you're really saying was, how do I know that the system supports, for example, ECDSA certificate versus RSS certificate?
Yeah, so there, I mean, there's a certificate, the CA, the set of CAs that you support, potentially the common certificate, common names for certificates from those CAs that you might support.
So there are leading best practice links. Yeah,
right.
But they're above. This is fairly low level.
Right. But you know, that's more up at the TLS layer. Same for OCSP stamping or whatever that's done and all that other kind of thing. Right. And so you're not saying anything about what that should be. That's for somebody else.
Well, so I mean, I think at this stage, so like we're at Hello World, right? So before we, because and this, as you're right there observing, this is a huge area with lots of precedent and everything else. But before we can even get to that world, we've got to be able to exchange the certificate. Right. So I think this is what we're trying to tackle first.
Sure.
And that was my gun jumping, was to say, Hello World is nice. I'm thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have a reference implementation that's a Docker container that we can deploy, that like now we can create certificates and now we can do zero-touch provisioning and everyone can actually use this thing. And yes, that is.
We want to regularly get past Hello World. Yes,
Okay, any more questions? No.